Saturday night in Vancouver brought a rough reality check for one of the UFC's most active and unpredictable competitors, Kevin Holland. Known for his quick turnarounds and relentless fighting schedule, Trailblazer entered the octagon for his fifth bout of 2025, hoping to add another win to his already jam-packed year. Instead, he walked away with a second consecutive loss, frustration written all over his face. Fans had expressed concern heading into the weekend, worried that Holland's trademark activity might finally be catching up to him. After all, he'd already fought 4 times this year, including a grueling all-out war against Daniel Rodriguez in July that many labeled a Fight of the Year contender. Still, in typical Holland fashion, rest was never an option. Determined to reach 6 fights before the year's end, he jumped back into action at UFC Vancouver, but this time, things didn't go his way. The 31-year-old American started strong against Canada's Mike Malott in the co-main event, taking the first round decisively on all 3 judges' scorecards. But as the fight wore on, momentum shifted. 2 painful low blows in the second round visibly hampered Holland's movement and rhythm, and despite repeated pauses, he struggled to recover fully. Malott capitalized on the opportunity, adjusting his pace and control to edge out the remaining rounds and secure a 29-28 unanimous decision win in front of a roaring home crowd. The fight wasn't without controversy or comedy. Afterward, Malott jokingly addressed the accidental fouls during his post-fight interview. "The game plan to knee him in the nuts was working perfectly," he quipped with a grin, before quickly clarifying, "No, I swear I was aiming for the body. That guy's hips are up by my nipples, man. It's hard to get a knee that high." The crowd erupted in laughter, but Holland, clearly frustrated, wasn't sharing the humor. Within minutes of leaving the cage, Holland took to social media to vent his disappointment, posting, "No doubt we suck, never bet on me again, and I need a head massage." The tweet, followed by a similar message on his Instagram story, drew a mix of sympathy and amusement from fans, many of whom have come to love Holland's brutally honest self-critiques. The fighter, known for his outspoken nature and frequent jokes even mid-fight, seemed unusually subdued this time around. With the loss, Holland's 2025 record now sits at 2-3, marking one of the most inconsistent years of his career. After starting the season with 2 impressive welterweight victories, including a slick submission win in March, his momentum has slipped away in back-to-back defeats. Despite this, few expect him to take much time off, especially given his reputation for accepting fights on short notice. Mike Malott, on the other hand, continues to climb. The Canadian has now strung together 3 straight wins since a stunning TKO defeat to Neil Magny in early 2024. Re-establishing himself as a dangerous force in the welterweight division. As for Holland, fans are left wondering whether he'll finally hit pause or if he'll keep up his chaotic pace in pursuit of one more fight before year's end. Either way, the Trailblazer remains one of MMA's most entertaining enigmas. Win, lose, or laugh about it later.
Reinier Derritter has revealed that his defeat to Brendan Allen at UFC Fight Night 262 in Vancouver came under brutal circumstances, fighting through both a severe norovirus infection and a broken hand suffered in the opening round. Taken to social media shortly after the event, the Dutch middleweight detailed his struggles leading up to the fight, admitting that he was sick all week, could barely stand, and still decided to go through with the bout. Despite the adversity, Derritter said he gave everything he had before setting his sights on a new target, former UFC middleweight champion Sean Strickland. The October 18th main event was Derritter's 4th UFC outing since joining the promotion from one championship, where he reigned as a dominant 2-division champion. Brendan Allen, who stepped in on short notice after Anthony Hernandez withdrew due to injury, put on a career-best performance, controlling Derritter on the mat for over 11 minutes and outlanding him 128-51 in total strikes, according to UFC stats. The fight ended when Derritter's corner threw in the towel after he was unable to rise from his stool before round 5. Even under compromised conditions, Derritter managed to score an early takedown and threatened with his trademark submission attempts in the first round. However, Allen's pressure and top control began to wear him down by the second frame. Once Allen reversed position and took control on the ground, he maintained dominance until the finish. It marked Derritter's first UFC loss after a 4.0 start to his octagon career and dropped his overall professional record to 21-3. Allen, meanwhile, improved to 26-7 and picked up the biggest victory of his career. His post-fight call-out of middleweight champion Dricus du Plessis immediately made headlines, though he also mentioned other top contenders, including Strickland. The win solidified Allen's position among the elite of the division and could earn him a title eliminator in early 2026. Derritter, however, was quick to issue his own challenge. In a defiant social media post, the Dutch grappler tagged Strickland directly, writing, "At S Strickland MMA, I'm coming for that middleweight belt. Let's do this." The call-out signals Derritter's intent to rebound immediately against one of the UFC's most polarizing figures. Sean Strickland, ranked number 3 in the division as of August 2025, hasn't fought since losing his title to du Plessis via unanimous decision at UFC 312 in February. With an overall record of 29-7, Strickland remains one of the most durable and outspoken fighters in the sport. His mix of high-volume striking and relentless pace could make for a fascinating stylistic clash against Derritter's elite grappling and submission-heavy game. Before any potential matchup can be confirmed, Derritter will need medical clearance after suffering both a viral infection and a hand fracture. If his recovery progresses as expected, a fight between Derritter and Strickland could emerge as a high-profile title eliminator in early 2026, potentially setting the stage for the next challenger to Dricus du Plessis' middleweight crown. Derritter's grit in Vancouver, despite his compromised condition, earned him widespread respect from fans and fighters alike. While the loss stings, his willingness to push through illness and injury further cemented his reputation as one of the toughest competitors in the sport. Now, with his eyes on redemption and a shot at the belt, Derritter appears determined to turn adversity into opportunity in his next octagon appearance. The long-rumored grudge match between the Baddie and El Matador looks closer than ever. In a new post shared to his Instagram stories late Friday night, Paddy Pimblett revealed that he has officially signed his side of the contract to face UFC lightweight champion Ilia Topuria and is now waiting for the champ to do the same. Signed and sent on my end. Now let's see if hand sanitizer boy puts pen to paper. The Liverpool native's jab reignited years of tension between the two, dating back to their infamous hotel altercation in London back in 2022, the same moment that first sparked their fiery rivalry. Since then, both fighters have taken verbal shots across interviews and social media, but a fight has always seemed just out of reach. Topuria, who captured the UFC lightweight title earlier this year at UFC 317 with a vicious knockout of Charles Oliveira, has yet to respond publicly. UFC CEO Dana White recently hinted that Spanish-Georgian champion is expected to headline the promotion's first-ever Paramount Plus event at UFC 324 in January 2026, and this matchup could be the blockbuster main event fans have been waiting for. Pimblett, meanwhile, is coming off the best form of his UFC career, having notched his 5th straight win since returning from injury. Known for his charisma and polarizing persona, the 30-year-old Scouser has repeatedly called out Topuria, insisting that it's personal and that he's the man to humble the fake king. If confirmed, Topuria versus Pimblett would mark one of the UFC's most heated rivalries finally spilling over into the octagon, and possibly one of the biggest fights in recent memory. Stay tuned, the ball is now in Topuria's court.
Marlon Chito Vera believes he was robbed on the judges' scorecards after his split decision loss to Ayman Zahabi at UFC Vancouver, and he's making no effort to hide his frustration. The bantamweight clash was one of the most closely contested fights of the night, with both men having their moments across 3 hard-fought rounds. When the judges' scores were read, Zahabi's hand was raised, but Vera made it clear afterward that he strongly disagreed with the outcome. Shortly after the fight, Vera took to Instagram to vent his disappointment and reaffirm his belief that he had done enough to win. Quote, "Sometimes things can get really dark," he wrote in a reflective but defiant post. "But not giving up will get you light. Don't get it twisted. I won tonight. We got robbed in Canada." The post quickly went viral, drawing a wave of support from fans who also felt the decision could have gone either way. For Vera, the loss marks another tough setback in what has been a difficult stretch of his career. The Ecuadorian fan favorite hasn't had his hand raised since August 2023, when he defeated Pedro Munhoz.
Since then, he's endured a rough run, suffering consecutive defeats to Sean O'Malley, Deiveson Figueiredo, and now Zahabi. Once considered one of the most dangerous contenders in the bantamweight division, Vera's recent skid has left his position in the rankings and his path back to title contention uncertain. Heading into UFC Vancouver, Vera was ranked number 7 at 135 pounds, while Zahabi sat at number 9. The win not only gives Zahabi a major boost in the rankings, but also solidifies his growing reputation as one of the most consistent performers in the division. The Canadian standout is now on a remarkable 7-fight winning streak, having defeated the likes of Jose Aldo, Javid Basharat, Ricky Turcios, and Awari Keeling, among others. His record now stands at 8-2 inside the UFC, and after beating Vera, he wasted no time in calling out former bantamweight champion Sean O'Malley for what would be the biggest fight of his career. Despite the controversy surrounding the decision, Vera's effort in Vancouver showed he still has plenty of fight left in him. He pressed forward throughout the bout, landing damaging leg kicks and heavy shots in the pocket, while Zahabi relied on sharp counters and slick movement to edge out the close rounds. The split nature of the decision reflected just how competitive the contest was. Many observers online echoed Vera's sentiment that he did enough to win, though the official judges saw it differently. Now facing the longest losing streak of his UFC career, Chito finds himself at a critical crossroads. At 32, he remains one of the most well-rounded and durable fighters in the division, but he'll need to regroup quickly if he wants to remain in the title picture. Vera has never been one to shy away from adversity, and his post-fight message suggests that he's determined to bounce back stronger in 2026. Meanwhile, Zahabi's victory has vaulted him into the conversation among the top bantamweight contenders. His recent success, coupled with his technical precision and composure under pressure, has drawn comparisons to his famed brother, Firas Zahabi, who coaches at the legendary TriStar Gym. With momentum firmly on his side and a call-out of O'Malley now circulating, Zahabi could find himself in a high-stakes matchup early next year. The UFC Vancouver card, headlined by Brendan Allen's stunning corner stoppage win over Reinier Derritter, offered a mix of upsets and breakthroughs. And while Zahabi celebrated the biggest win of his career, Vera left the octagon convinced that fate, not skill, cost him the fight. For Chito, redemption now becomes the mission as he looks to silence any doubt that his best days are behind him.
Merab Dvalishvili's dominance over the UFC bantamweight division has become so overwhelming that even his next opponent is a familiar face, former champion Jan. The two are set to meet again at UFC 323 in December, a rematch more than 2 years in the making. Their first encounter in 2023 marked a career-defining night for Dvalishvili. The Georgian machine delivered a suffocating, relentless performance, outpacing Jan from start to finish and attempting a staggering 49 takedowns over 5 rounds. It was the fight that transformed Dvalishvili from a top contender into a bona fide champion-level force, a man who broke his opponents through sheer pace, grit, and conditioning. But as the rematch approaches, Jan has been vocal in claiming that fans haven't yet seen him at his best. The Russian former champ recently stated that he was only at 50% in their first meeting, a remark that didn't sit well with Dvalishvili's head coach, John Wood of Syndicate MMA. Jan's back in the mix, and all of a sudden it's, "I was 50%? Why are we hearing about that now, 2.5 years later?" Everyone's banged up going into a fight. If you're that hurt, don't take it. Don't make excuses after you lose. That's not what champions do. Wood went on to reveal that Dvalishvili himself fought Jan with serious injuries, a detail he never made public. According to his coach, Merab entered the cage with a broken hand, so swollen that he could barely fit his glove on. Despite the injury, Dvalishvili still dominated Jan for 25 minutes, never allowing him to breathe. His hand was the size of a football, never said a word about it. That's Merab. He just shows up and goes to war. This attitude, Wood explained, is what separates contenders from champions, the ability to perform under pressure, through pain, without complaint. He added that Dvalishvili faced similar adversity ahead of his title defense against Umar Nurmagomedov earlier this year, a fight he won Quote, "God is my witness. I almost hoped the commission wouldn't clear him. He was that unhealthy. But even when he could barely walk, he'd come into the gym, spar 10 rounds, and just dominate everyone. That's Merab. There's no quit in that guy." Wood's comments also extended to other contenders, including Corey Sandhagen, who suffered a lopsided defeat to Dvalishvili earlier this year at UFC 320, but has since claimed he believes the fight was still winnable. Wood said he understands why fighters talk that way. They need to convince themselves, but insisted that none of them truly grasp what it's like to deal with Dvalishvili's unique style. You can't replicate Merab. You can't find sparring partners who can do what he does for 5 rounds. You can bring in 10 fresh guys every minute, and it still won't feel like fighting Merab. His timing, his pressure, his explosiveness, it's different. Despite his admiration for Jan and other elite bantamweights, Wood doesn't see any scenario where the result changes in the rematch. "I'm a fan of Jan. He's an incredible fighter, very technical, very well coached. But Merab's evolved. He's sharper now, stronger, and more efficient. I think this version of Merab finishes Jan, and he could do it in multiple ways." As December approaches, Dvalishvili remains one of the UFC's most respected and relentless athletes. Whether it's broken bones, illness, or a tough opponent in front of him, the machine keeps moving forward, and his coach believes that's exactly what will happen again when the cage door closes at UFC 323.
The long-discussed fun fight between Alex Pereira and Jon Jones has once again ignited debate across the MMA world, but this time the idea carries more weight, literally. What began as an intriguing fantasy matchup between two of the sport's most dominant figures has now evolved into a legitimate possibility, with whispers suggesting the UFC could stage the historic bout at a White House event next June. Yet, despite the growing excitement, UFC CEO Dana White finds himself torn between fan demand, logistical hurdles, and the reality of Jon Jones's uncertain future. Earlier this summer, White dismissed the notion of Pereira versus Jones, calling the matchup a size mismatch and pointing out that Jones is simply too big for Powhatan. At the time, Pereira was reigning over the light heavyweight division, while Jones's status as heavyweight champion remained in limbo due to repeated delays, injuries, and ultimately retirement. But following Pereira's electrifying 80-second knockout of Magomed Ankalaev at UFC 320, everything changed. Standing in the octagon, basking in the roar of the crowd, Pereira teased the idea himself. It would be at the White House against Jon Jones. The line, equal parts playful and prophetic, immediately sent fans into a frenzy. As the UFC prepares for a monumental show scheduled at the White House on June 14, 2026, an unprecedented move for combat sports, Pereira's bold statement has only intensified speculation. The Brazilian knockout artist, who has now reclaimed his light heavyweight crown in devastating fashion, seems eager to test himself against the sport's most decorated fighter. For Jon Jones, however, the path forward is less clear. The former two-division champion announced his retirement earlier this year, citing disillusionment with the sport and the delays surrounding his title defense against Tom Aspinall. Still, as with everything involving Jones, retirement never feels final. The 37-year-old legend hinted at a possible one-off return, but only for the right fight. "If the bosses don't want the Alex Pereira fight to happen, then I'll just move on with my life. You can either lose me or get one more super fight, and that's with Alex Pereira." His comments reignited talks that the UFC might tempt him with one last payday, especially with the global attention a White House card would draw. Meanwhile, Bruce Buffer, the iconic voice of the Octagon, weighed in on the speculation in an interview with TJ DeSantis. "We'd all love to see Jon fight Pereira, but I really feel that Jon should fight Aspinall. He's a heavyweight. Jon's not going to go back down to light heavyweight at all." The 68-year-old announcer also noted that Pereira, for all his talent and star power, might be better off staying put at 205 pounds, where he can continue to build his legacy as a two-time light heavyweight champion. "He should stay and dominate the light heavyweight division," Buffer continued.
There are still contenders there for him to fight. But the question remains, can Dana White resist the allure of one of the biggest potential fights in UFC history? Jon Jones versus Alex Pereira would transcend divisions and perhaps even eras. Both men are generational talents, both have conquered multiple weight classes, and both carry the kind of mystique that turns a fight into an event. And with the UFC preparing a once-in-a-lifetime venue at the White House, the temptation to make the impossible happen is stronger than ever. Still, White has made it clear that his confidence in Jones has waned. The UFC CEO reportedly feels burned by Jones' repeated withdrawals and abrupt retirement, telling associates that while he respects the legend's achievements, he's hesitant to center another major card around him. John's credibility isn't what it used to be, one source close to the promotion claimed. Dana wants reliability, and Pereira has been the one delivering that. In the meantime, Pereira continues to sit atop the light heavyweight throne, unbothered by the noise but fully aware of the spectacle surrounding his name. Whether he chooses to chase history at heavyweight or continue carving out his dominance at 205 pounds, Poatan remains one of the UFC's most captivating figures. And if the stars align, or perhaps if politics allow, the image of Alex Pereira and Jon Jones squaring off on the south lawn of the White House could become one of the most surreal and iconic moments in combat sports history. For now, the matchup exists somewhere between rumor and reality, suspended in the unique space where ambition, ego, and opportunity collide. But as both fighters have shown time and again, in the world of MMA, the unthinkable has a way of finding its way into the cage.